Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of the first manga I read as a child, with my younger brothers after Dragon Ball, and pretty much all of the Naruto that was available at the time, as back then this was the only way for me to enjoy my anime. For reason, you know? Okay, I didn't have the internet or a way to watch them on TV back then. So on the bright side, I got to read a lot of manga, like Fullmetal Alchemist and Rurouni Kenshin. But you know what's so crazy? It's that when I think about it, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the first manga that I got into, even though the main characters didn't do any physical battle to solve their problem, you know, in good old shonen fashion way, but rather did it with a mind game of sorts, where the winner wasn't the strongest one, but the smartest. So I can say that Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the gateway in some way for me to watching anime where the characters do not fight. But with that said, even as a child, there was something that I couldn't help but notice. Yugi couldn't lose, like at all. The stakes were so damn high that he just couldn't lose. No matter how dire the situation, Yugi would always end up whipping the floor with his opponent by playing the right card at the right time. Even though I always knew this, I can't help but wonder why that was the case, and wouldn't it have been better if the tension would have felt more? I don't know. Real? Well, that's what I will try to answer today. In Yu-Gi-Oh! When the main character fights, it's by playing game with his opponent, and for most of the series it's with the iconic card game. But as you may not know, the card game in the manga was not based on an existing one. It was in fact the other way around, meaning that the writer could always come up with made-up card to make Yugi win, as he basically made every card up anyway. Add that to the fact that Yugi always drew the right card to win, and it's easy to see why there was no tension in the series. In fact, it goes to the point where Yugi can just, at the last possible minute, draw a card that just happened to make him win. So how can the viewer be expected to feel any tension from a fight where the main character can just draw a Deus Ex Machina anytime the writer needs it to, making the tension in Yu-Gi-Oh! Non-existent, as there is no strategy involved in a random draw of a card that can make someone win almost instantly. And I know what you're going to say, but there is no tension in Dragon Ball. Goku won't lose to anyone. Well, that's true that most of the tension in shonen is artificial, because the main character can't just die in a random fight, not in a shonen manga at the very least. But it must still be able to sell its tension as believable, at least in some way. I mean, when Frieza kills everyone on Namek and is about to blow the planet, the manga sells it. Because even if Goku lives, nobody can come back to life without Namek's Dragon Ball, being the whole reason why they came here in the first place. And when Rock Lee fight Gaara, you think everything could happen by the end of the fight, because he is a side character that can die or be hurt, and that Gaara was already shown killing someone he fought in a previous chapter. I mean, I don't know about killing, but how do you call that? Yu-Gi-Oh! Is about a card game. It can't just try to have the same tension than a regular shonen, because if Yugi loses, how can it affect anyone other than him? He just lost at a children card game, and it's not like he can die from it. Until the Shadow game came in the franchise. What I mean by that is that when Yugi can lose his life, if he loses a single fight, you know he will win, because if not, he dies. And by the way, why does an anime about a card game has to have stakes so damn high? Now you get a situation where it's impossible to believe any of the tension where the Shadow game is involved. I mean, really? We know that Yugi won't lose when someone's life is in danger, especially his own, because if he dies, the show couldn't continue. If you don't know, a Shadow game is when the bad guy triggers a state where the main character can die or lose his soul if he loses, making the stakes of those fights super high. And you know what? Every villain does it. Like, they all do it. Especially at the end of an arc, where the tension is supposed to be at its highest, making them feel shallow. follow. And I know Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an anime with a lot of magic, and it wouldn't be the same without it, as the show is written with a lot of magical elements to say the least, like the Millennium Object, but most of the time the stakes are so damn high that there is no way in hell that Yu-Gi will lose. I mean, I get it for the final fight of an arc, and even then it's a little much for losing a card game, but sometimes the whole arc is set up in ways that prevent Yu-Gi from losing, and by extension, preventing us from feeling any dread from any of the fight. Like at the start of the island of Duelist. I mean, after Pegasus kinda beat him and kidnapped the soul of his grandpa, for God's sake, he kidnapped the soul of his grandpa in a children card game, and he is forced to win the tournament to win it back, you know Yu-Gi can't lose at any cost like he can. If he loses, his grandpa dies, so we already know he will beat Pegasus before the arc even begins. There is no tension, we all know the ending at the start. But there's more. In this tournament, you can only enter the final if you get 10 stars, betting at least a star per duel, and 2 most of the time to save some time on the arc. But since Yugi gave one of his to Joey, so he could compete too, he now had an even thicker plot armor than before. I mean, it's hard enough to win a star in the tournament, so he couldn't afford to lose any fight, especially those where he was betting all of his star. And I mean, since he had one, you knew that his first fight was gonna be an instant win. Plus now that Joey also had 1 star, none of them could lose any fight, as that would have been more fight and conflict in a place where Yugi grandpa could die if Yugi didn't win. In fact, Yugi won so much that someone stole his star just to make it harder for him, meaning that now he had an even thicker plot armor because he had to do it all again. And that's because it gave him even less room to fail, but Yugi still managed to regain all of his star and go to the final rather easily. And you know what? Yugi only lose once in the entire arc, and it's when Kaiba threatened to kill himself. Because if the opponent doesn't have more to lose than Yugi, Yugi can't lose a duel. I mean, he even beat Joey to the final since he is the main character and could always give the money to Joey afterward to help him pay for his sister operation. So really, there was no room at all for Yugi to lose in this arc at all. Why couldn't the writer write an arc in a way where there's a way where Yugi can lose some of his fight he is in? It's almost as bad in the Battle City arc, where after Yugi gained Slifer, he just couldn't lose because the price of losing was betting the strongest card he had, so he couldn't lose the Egyptian God card. It's the same thing during the fight between Marek and Joey. Joey just couldn't win because if he won, he would have won the Egyptian God card and Yugi wouldn't have had to beat him afterward, making those moments really uneventful as nothing bad could happen to them during those situations. And you knew from the start who was going to win. Add that with the fact that Yugi ends up always having the right card for every situation, even when he has no idea what strategy any of his opponents use, and you get a situation where it's not about how Yugi is going to beat his opponent, but more when he is going to do it. I mean, at the start of the Battle City arc, Joey loses his best card to one of Marek's goons, and Yugi ends up beating him in a duel to get the card back. But the thing is that this guy had built his entire deck around summoning Exodia, and Yugi happened to draw 2 cards that combined together made it so that he could destroy all the cards his opponent had that had the same name as a card he chose. I don't remember the exact detail, but still, that's basically what he did. The thing is, we as a viewer didn't know he had a card that could do that, because in each arc he has new card that we don't know about, and he just happened to draw the card before his opponent could summon Exodia. Like we are supposed to believe that, and it's not like Yugi built a deck for that. No, he just had the card to beat him already in his deck. I mean, before challenging him, he didn't even know his strategy. Plus, Yugi and Marek acted like he was weak to rely on just one strategy, and to think that Yugi just by chance had the right card in his deck, and with more chance drew it out of his fourth card, before someone who had an entire deck built around summoning Exodia the fastest way fucking possible, did what his deck was made for? Well, it's hard to believe anything is a challenge for Yugi after that. And it wasn't, especially since he won all his fight after that, except the fight with Joey, where he let himself lose because Joey was possessed and one of them was supposed to die if he lose the duel, which didn't happen because the stakes are always super high and there is never anyone who suffer any consequences from any of those fights, at least from the main character side of things. But is there a way to make the tension in Yu-Gi-Oh! Believable in any way? Well,
yeah dude, a lot actually. You see, the most important part in any show to build up tension is for us to understand the moveset of the character involved, for lack of better term. But in Yu-Gi-Oh! The main character and opponent have 40 random different cards to pick from during a duel. And we don't know shit about those cards. Okay, let's take an example. If you watch a show and I tell you that the opponent will kill the main character if he see him, the tension comes from how does the character win without being seen, right? So each time the character gets close to being seen, you know he's close to death, which is how the tension is built. Take any scene from John Wick. Every time a gun is pointed at John, the tension builds up because we know that a bullet will hurt him. But we also know that he is an expert in close quarter combat and marksmanship. Since John Wick is the main character, we know that he won't die, but knowing what could be fatal makes us think it could happen. And knowing his moveset makes his obvious victory satisfying as his win is earned. But in Yu-Gi-Oh! We don't know when something could be fatal to Yugi or how he could win, so we are left watching people bringing random move out of nowhere non-stop. Okay, so how would you fix it then? How to fix it should be obvious by now. We should know most of the cards in Yugi's deck. I mean, sure, 40 cards is a lot, but if the writer would have slowly built up a deck of 40 cards that would mostly stay the same for Yugi, it would fix part of the problem. As knowing how Yugi could win by making us understand the possible strategy from his deck would make the duel way more interesting and have way more tension, cause when he would combo 2 cards we already saw him use, it would make us go, oh, that's clever, why didn't I think of that? Instead of, oh, I guess that random card I never saw was the solution for his problem. Whew, that was a close one, guys. Also, knowing part of the strategy that surrounds an opponent's deck could help us understand which strategy Yugi could use to defeat them. I mean, knowing what both sides is capable of is basically what makes the tension. Knowing how Yugi could lose and how the opponent could possibly win. This is what makes artificial tension in shonen. The other thing that they should change is toning down the stakes of the duel a bit, kinda like you said. Like, Yugi didn't have to be so close to the edge at each duel, like one lose and it's over. Instead they could make it so that Yugi could lose a duel or two, like maybe they could do stuff like ordinary tournaments or something like that, not always shadow game. We know he won't lose if the stakes are too high. Or they could make a rule where you can lose 2 times but you have to win 3 times to get in final or something like that. Also, they should get rid of the fucking soul of the card. It's like if you believe you win. I know some shows have the Nakama power up, but this is on a whole new fucking level. It's explicitly said that if you believe, you just draw the right card. Like, what the fuck, man?
But you know what, even though all that, Yu-Gi-Oh! Stayed really interesting for me because it never was about the tension, but rather how much enjoyment I could get out of this series, bringing all the crazy stuff with the magic and all. And that was enough for me, even if Yugi won with drawing a bullshit card. But still a little more tension in some part of the series would have been nice. So do you agree? Do you disagree? Well, you can tell me in the comment section below. So don't forget to leave a like and to subscribe if you liked the video and want more videos like those.